from The Athletic back here on The Fan, coming to you from the Bob Kurtz Radio Center at Kevin Fallness' studios. This is a nice couple rooms here, Kevin.
Yeah.
Almost nicer than the actual Fan.
I can't tell you how lucky I am. I mean, for a person in radio working in the National Hockey League, I don't think there's many setups like this. I know the Avalanche have something similar that I've seen. They call it the cage, and there are some good spots, but I mean, we've got state-of-the-art equipment down here, from the board that's in front of me, which is, I wouldn't even want to put a number on it because people might be listening that could, what? We gave him what? But this is state-of-the-art stuff down here.
This is why we're not signing players?
Well, I don't know that we'll go that far. But yeah, I mean, they threw this one together. We did this in 2003. They gutted a supply room or something like that. And Todd Leiweke was the guy that championed putting the radio inside the building. I did the first 3 years off campus. It was not the best setup, but ever since then we've had this in some form or fashion, and it's as good as it's ever been right now.
And I'm sure the local radio stations love it. Like, they don't have to send people out here to gather sound like you see in so many other markets.
I think so. I mean, I think I perform a service that most people probably don't even know about, and you know, there's probably many stations across the state, not just in the Twin Cities, that I provide audio for too, that, you know, without it, you'd probably fall off the map a little bit. So it's kind of nice.
As Brett Blakemore always says, you are a saint.
I really am. Great guy.
Really
I've always said that.
Yeah. You have any, so Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line, you have any good ones?
I do. I've got a bunch of them that are coming in. Again, keep sending them in. 64686 from the 651 area code. Michael, from your vantage point, Matt Boldy, what's going on with his game? The 651 area code says, why is it bad right now, and what does it need to happen? What needs to happen to get it back on track?
Yeah, it's funny because the last couple days, it feels like John Hines is doing everything he can to protect him and insulate him and say his game has not been bad. Obviously, we're seeing him not produce nearly as much as he did earlier in the season, and he's taken 7 penalties in his last 7 games, which is and some of these are definitely reaching penalties in the offensive zone. The one the other night was just a needless penalty. And so it's just not good. I personally believe that John is pinning a lot on his line mates. And I think that's why we're not going to see Ryan Hartman on that line tonight. And I think it'll be good for Ryan to get back to right wing, because that's where he earlier this season I thought was playing very, very well. Now, Ryan's been playing with an injury all year long. Actually, I think it's been going back to last year. He missed time after the St. Louis game for a while on that long road trip with this injury. And it's, when I see him in the locker room, it's clearly not fixed. It's something that he's probably going to have to deal with for a long time. But I think that, I don't disagree with the person that's texting, though. Like, we are not seeing the best of Matt Boldy right now. And I think that he just needs to, he's always been a streaky player. Sometimes when he's streaky too, there's sometimes you almost wish for a shift or two, you throw him back with Kaprizov to help his game get along. And then if you need to switch things back, go that route. Because there are just times where I think he needs a little help to get him the puck, because he is one of those guys. Kaprizov likes to play with the puck, carry the puck, can dish as well as anybody. But Matt's got to be put into shooting positions. And we've seen lately some one-timers getting handcuffed because the pass has not been perfect from whoever's getting in the puck. And I think that he just needs one to go in, and then usually with Matt Boldy, once one goes in, 3 or 4 or 5 will go in quickly, but they need it quickly.
Here's an interesting one, and maybe this would have been a good one for Chris Kelleher, your most recent guest, but from the 701 area code. More likely to play a playoff game for the Wild this season, Buyam or Juracek?
It's a good question. I would say actually Juracek. I think if they have a right shot injury, obviously Juracek is going to get that call. The other day they grabbed Dermott off waivers because they suddenly were out Middleton with Brodin out, and they, for in a league where most people are searching for right shot guys, they needed a left shot guy. Like, what are the chances? And that's just because Carson Lambos, they feel, is not ready yet, although they feel like he's playing better down in the minors. But they grabbed Dermott. Dermott will play tonight. But I would say Juracek more so than Buyam. I think that if they sign Buyam after the Frozen Four, assuming that they're going to go to the Frozen Four, that, they'll give him... Remember, Brock Faber was not supposed to play playoff games, but he was so good in those 2 games that he got in the regular season that they're like, wait a minute, we're putting him right in the lineup. Buyam, if they've got Brodin, Middleton, and Chisholm, healthy or Dermott healthy, my guess is that he is not going to play right away in the playoffs. So that would just be my guess. But we'll see.
Here's one from General Soreness to 64686. Michael, if Jack Capuano called you into the office and says, Michael, I wish I could do a Boston accent.
Yeah,
I can't. But if he says, Michael, come in here. What do we need to do on the penalty kill? What would be the first thing that you would tell Jack Capuano? This is what I would do to try to get things sparked for your leaky PK.
Two goalies. Let's try that.
I don't think that's legal.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is Jack has not got his hands really on the PK right now. It seems to be back to Pat Dwyer. Like the other day when they were working on PK and things like that, Jack was working on other stuff. And so I'm not positive that he's got his hands as much into it as they originally had planned. One thing I think it's a personnel issue at this point because it's been the same guys. And now earlier this season, like one big issue is they're not winning a draw. So having Eriksson out of the lineup hurts. Huznadinov's got to be better in the circle. They've got to get better draws from guys like Gaudreau and Huznadinov. But then they got to win 50-50 pucks. We saw in the goal the other night. The goal the other night, I mean, that's one where they score 7 seconds in because they don't win a 50-50 puck. That's part of it. When Trennan was in the lineup earlier in the season, their PK was doing really well. He was great in the neutral zone on their forecheck, just disrupting plays. That's where it all starts. But I've joked about this at times on the podcast, but there might come a point where you just want to try guys like Kaprizov and Boldy. Remember, Jack's philosophy is that stars can be on the PK. We saw it the other night with Reinhart and Barkov. We've seen it in New York with guys like Kreider and Trocheck. We see it in Toronto with Matthews and
isn't
Marner.
Hughes doing it in New York too,
Hughes
or
is doing
New Jersey?
it in New Jersey.
Yeah.
In Stutzla and Claude Giroux and players like that. And it keeps people honest. And there's a reason why Kirill Kaprizov and Boldy are on every 5-on-6 because they feel like John has explained it that the offensive instincts that they have lend itself to they know just instinctually where pucks are going to go on the flanks and things like that. And you just wonder if those guys on the PK, maybe even thinking offense, like what do you have to lose? Other than you don't want an injury.
And the fact that he logs so much time. He logs so much minutes, and then you start throwing him out on the PK. Does he ever get a breather?
Yeah, that would be the issue. And you don't want to risk injury and things like that. But I don't know. I would like to see it once. And it's not like the old days where you felt like if your third and fourth liners weren't on the power play that you had to give them a penalty kill just to, give them a role on the team. We're not seeing that in every organization now. We're seeing actual stars on the PK. So I'm not saying that, Kirill Kaprizov's going to magically fix it, but I would like to see, if these guys aren't getting it done, there just comes a point where you got to try different guys. And it's because this has been multiple coaching staffs that haven't been able to fix it, multiple goalies in net. Their PK hasn't been good for years. And it's not just the last 2 years on a playoff. It's actually, if you look at their numbers, their penalty kills since the days of Mike Yeo and especially Jacques Lemaire have gone down and down and down the last decade. And so it's not the way it used to be. This is not your grandfather's Minnesota Wild, so to speak. When we come back, one of the great Vikings writers out there for The Athletic, proud of this guy. He came up here after covering the Kansas City Royals for The Athletic and took on the Vikings beat here when Chad Graff left for New England. He's just done a superb job for The Athletic. Alec Lewis will be right back on The Fan.
Head over to NFLshop.com for the largest collection of officially licensed gear from all your favorite brands. NFL Shop is your ultimate gifting destination for jerseys, t-shirts, headwear, and more. Take your game day style to the next level with the best selection of NFL gear anywhere. Show off your team pride this holiday season with styles fit for the whole family. To shop now, go to NFLshop.com.
Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan. Nick Bjugstad, Marcus Foligno still to come. Joe O'Donnell, the voice of Wild Radio, will be in here the last hour or so of the show as well. before his big Instagram video that he does every single night, Kevin, with Kevin Gorg.
Oh, I rarely hear them, but we can see them from our perch up in the Al Shaver press box. Him and Gorg, of course, talking with his hands the whole time. I'm sure it's awesome to watch on the Wild Instagram.
And him holding like the Bacardi bottle of rum and everything. It's pretty funny. Like Gorg, who doesn't drink.
Exactly.
So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't just ruin that endorsement. One of the biggest prides that John Krasinski and I have here in Minnesota is our Vikings writer and our Vikings coverage. Alec Lewis came here as this young pup that covered the Kansas City Royals for The Athletic. Took over the Vikings beat right at the beginning. I think was it Mike Zimmer's last year, Alec?
No, it was actually O'Connell's first year. So 2 years ago, 22. It feels like 10 years ago because this team is absurd. But yeah, 2 years ago.
That's pretty awesome. By the way, you want to hear something funny? So I got a text message the other day from John Krasinski, and I didn't think he was serious, but it turned out he was. He asked if I wanted to cover the Wolves game tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Luckily the Wild have a game against Winnipeg. It was a great excuse to get out of it. But he actually genuinely wanted me to fill in because you were on the road.
Yeah, and he knows I would have loved doing it. Like during the playoffs last year, I think I bothered him every week. And it's funny that you mention it because PA was giving it to me earlier today about the fact that I didn't bother John for last night. And I just didn't do it because I knew that he had real work to do. And if I'm sure you saw the story that I read this morning, and he did the job. I know that.
Yeah, he always does. And obviously a big loss for the Wolves, but Cat just came in here and just lit it up. And it's pretty cool. It was kind of cool. I mean, watching him come in here and just say, hey, I'm going to perform.
I thought the same thing. And it's so interesting. And I've thought about it a lot with this Viking season, and you see it every day covering the Wild. Like they're just like the team chemistry and just the vibes around a team. Like it's very easy to just pick up. Like right now, if you go to a Vikings locker room, you're going to see like Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson like playing basketball on a mini hoop that they put in the locker room. Like it is just that type of situation. I feel like with the Wolves this year, you can just kind of just even sense watching the games, the difference in terms of energy and relationships on the court. So I don't know. I always find that stuff so interesting. Maybe that just is the nerd in me that loves the chemistry aspect, but I got to think it matters.
No, absolutely. I covered actually the Heat in 2005, and that was the year before I think they won it all. And just watching like D Wade and Shaq and Eddie Jones and Damon Jones and how these guys got along, Udonis Haslem, you just knew they were building something special there, and it's obviously big. And that's what's going on right now with your juggernaut of a Vikings team that suddenly has the ability to win the NFC North. A huge game coming up on Sunday in Seattle. Not going to be just a cakewalk, though.
No, and I think it's great that you say that, and that's kind of been my, reminder, not only to myself, but also just in writing. I mean, this Seahawks team is very interesting. It is the first year of a new head coach up there in Mike McDonald, who's a very sharp defensive guy, young guy, who took over for Pete Carroll, who's obviously a legend and really built the culture and the successful organization that he built up there. And this team, it's been up and down this year. Geno Smith at quarterback's kind of interesting. Their offensive coordinator comes from college, so he's interesting. They just have not been very consistent, but they have a lot of talent. Like I was at practice, right after practice ended a couple of hours ago, I was talking with the Vikings executive, and he's just like, Alec, like the defensive front on this team is menacing, and they have interior guys, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, the rookie. They've got Jaron Reed, a former Alabama guy that can really wreak havoc. And I know just watching some of these games, like the Vikings offensive line, to me, is still partly a question. So to go up to Seattle, to play in that environment, and then to play against a team that does have the talent like Seattle does, it is going to be a test. And it is an important one if this Vikings team wants to secure some stuff down the stretch that I don't think anybody in the entire world thought was possible a couple months ago.
By the way, when you were talking to this employee, were you doing it by your special parking spot at TCO?
Oh my goodness! I cannot believe I can't believe you picked that up. So you got a good source. I mean, I know you do, but that's impressive.
So you got a special spot. I'm not being given wrong information.
No, it's kind of a joke. So what the people don't know, and what they really don't need to know, is that the TCO Performance Center is one of the best construction zones in the entire Minnesota area, state, region, really. They are constantly doing stuff in the parking lot. There are 18-wheelers out there. There are snow piles out there. They're building an ice castle out there. They have done renovations on the sidewalk there. And so there have been days where there are no parking spots, and it is negative 8 degrees. At least that's how it feels to me. And so you've got to get creative at times, which I've done, and other people, maybe Dane Mizutani, maybe not, have given it to me because of it.
Oh, Dan, he's just a treasure. So, well, that's hilarious. We're talking about Alec Lewis, Alec_Lewis on Twitter if you want to follow him, or on X. And Alec, genius tweet by this football expert back on September 15th. It goes by Russo Hockey. Goes, who knows where this Sam Darnold thing goes? And I loved Kirk Cousins, but it's funny so many people question the Vikings not giving $180 million over 4 years to a 36-year-old coming off a ruptured Achilles. Talk about a perfect week to bring that tweet back. Kirk Cousins benched in Atlanta, and Sam Darnold thing just continues to just be legendary.
Look, you know what's interesting is every time you talk football, every time John Krasinski talks football, I mean, you guys are just all over it. I mean, you really, I don't know. Terry Fontenot, the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, could give you a call. If he needs your number, I can provide it for him. But that was very astute by you. And, I mean, it really does. You know, it's so interesting because I've watched on a more serious note, just like the narratives around here in some capacity about, like, yeah, I mean, what a great move. It was obvious what to do. But the reality is, and I was thinking about this earlier today, like you had a GM and a head coach who had not won a playoff game entering their third season. And I mean, to move off a guy who probably, even with the injury, like they probably would have expected if they had Kirk Cousins, you win 8 or 9 games. There's kind of a floor there, but you give yourself a chance from a longevity standpoint as leaders. They really, in Quasito Fomento, the GM, and Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, it was like, you know what, we're just going to introduce max variance and believe in the infrastructure we've built, that variance will go the right way. And that's exactly what's happened. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell and this staff and these skill players have maximized Sam Darnold's outlook, both for this year and beyond. But I do think, like, I kind of, at some point, I think it's important to make note of the idea that, like, it was not the most conservative of approaches, even if looking back and being revisionist, it does totally make sense. And you were on it at the time, but with the contracts that were at play, to me, it's just, it is worth kind of reiterating.
And what is the future with Sam? I mean, is there any, I mean, what do you think happens here after the season?
Well, it is a great question, and the first place I'll start in answering it is just it's going to be really interesting to see what he does down the stretch. Like these last, I believe I looked at this yesterday. His last 5 games, he's thrown 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. If that type of production continues first down the stretch in this regular season, so the next 3 games, Seattle on the road, at home against the Packers, and then on the road against Detroit, then his value is going to continue to increase. And then how the Vikings finish in the playoffs is obviously going to play a big role in that. But his value, if it continues to increase, he'll generate a lot of interest on the market. I mean, part of the reality about him, potentially being available this offseason for other teams is the draft does not have a ton of exceptional quarterbacks. There are some interesting options, but none of them are as much of no-brainers as last year's class was. And then the other potential free agents are guys like Russell Wilson, like Kirk Cousins, older guys that are not as mobile and don't have the upside that Sam Darnold has. So he's put himself in a really good position, and the Vikings will have to weigh a lot of things. I mean, they'll have to weigh monetarily, like how far they're willing to go. They'll have to weigh J.J. McCarthy and where they feel his development is going to be at, given the fact he hasn't been on the field. And I mean, truthfully, one option could be applying the franchise tag to Sam Darnold, and then potentially, if another team is willing to pay much more and for much longer than the Vikings are. They could trade Sam Darnold on the franchise tag, recoup a draft pick for this upcoming cycle, and then kind of continue with their team building approach that they've taken originally. There are a lot of ways that it could go, but that one seems feasible to me, given kind of the direction that this is going in terms of the value that Sam Darnold will really have.
Hi, Alec. My name is Kevin Fallness. Nice to virtually meet you. It's always great to meet the acquaintance of another cog in the athletic empire. How are you today?
I'm great, Kevin. Great to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Well, you guys have talked about Darnold, and there's a lot of focus on the receiving core for this team for great reason. I'm curious on your assessment of year number one of Aaron Jones in a Vikings uniform. Watching on the couch, nothing makes me more nervous when they hand it to him because I've seen so many fumbles, but he's had his good days and his bad days. He's nearing 1,000 yards now in his first season in purple. What have you thought?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing with Aaron Jones that deserves mention is just like how much he has meant to this locker room. You can't overstate just the leadership kind of element that he has brought to the table, the awareness level that he's brought to the table. I think it's been massive internally, and that stuff usually never gets talked about because on-field production is what's mattered, and on the field, to your point, when he has not fumbled the football. And when he has not missed spurts of games due to injury, and he's been banged up a little bit over the course of the year, he's been pretty dynamic. I thought, at least in my opinion, Monday night, it might have been the white jerseys that made him look sleeker than ever, but I really felt like he had as much juice Monday night and was moving as quickly as I've seen since probably the beginning of the season. He also has not fumbled the ball, I believe, in the last 2 or 3 games. So for me, that was more of a blip than something that I think really just like will plague him down the stretch. He's going to be big down the stretch. That's what I would say, and that's probably the point I would underscore about Aaron Jones. The more of these good teams the Vikings face, the more they will probably opponents will probably sell out to stopping the receiving core, and when teams do that, that opens up opportunity and holes in the run game. That's where Aaron Jones can thrive. So it's very worth bringing him up, Kevin. I think it's very smart to, and I think his role down the stretch here is going to be very big. The fact he's healthy, given how his career has gone in terms of injuries, is a good sign just to start as this team approaches what is going to be a pretty tough gauntlet.
A couple more for you, Alec. We're talking with Alec Lewis from The Athletic. Alec, you wrote an awesome story a couple weeks ago when the Vikings played in Tennessee about Harry the Hitman, Harrison Smith. Obviously it feels like his career is going to end in Canton. Do you feel like this is going to be probably his last 3 regular season games of his career?
I'm not willing to go there, Michael. Like he's played forever. Like we joke all the time, like he's going to be 47, still calling signals on the back end. But, I really think he's having such a good time right now playing under Brian Flores and in this defense and playing alongside guys that he's grown very close with. And that's not only players, but like every Friday morning, he and Kevin O'Connell drink coffee in the office together, and they're talking football, but they're also, I think, talking life a lot of times. I just feel like maybe even Brian Flores' kind of integration within this staff kind of it's brought a little bit of a resurgence with Harrison. That's not to say that he fell off at all. I just feel like he is enjoying things at a really high level. And I mean, he's always said, as long as he feels like he can make the impact and as long as he's enjoying it the way he always has, he feels like there's no replacement really for both, the team vibe that you get when you're in a locker room, but also the adrenaline that you get on Sunday. So I really think, depending on how this thing ends, there is a chance that he is back next year. That's how I genuinely feel.
That'd be awesome. And I know he has a ton of respect for guys like Durante Jones and obviously Brian Flores and KOC. Yeah. And speaking of the latter two, last question for you, Alec. 2-parter. One, KOC, when's that extension coming? Because we know he's heading, as we say in hockey, for Jack Adams. Coach of the Year. And the other one is your Chicago brethren come to town, and they're all writing about Brian Flores and trying to pluck him from the Vikings here. Not only one story, I think there were like two that day. What's the future of Brian Flores here in Minnesota?
Yeah, I'll start with Flores and then end it with Kevin O'Connell. I feel like it's worthwhile. Yeah, it was funny. Brian Flores, I had a couple of our Bears writers at The Athletic. They come to me. They're like, what would the Vikings defenders be good talking about Flores and potentially him becoming a head coach? I'm like, yeah, they'll talk about him all day long for the job that he's done, the relationship that he has with them. I would say to you, Michael, that it's based on merit and the job that he's done here in 2 years, both from a schematic standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, from a identifying personnel standpoint. It has been an unbelievable job that he's done to take this defense from where it was in 2022 when Daniel Jones was throwing for 300 yards at US Bank Stadium against them to doing what they've done the last 2 years. Again, you really can't say enough about it. As far as his head coaching prospects, I mean, it's going to probably, there are other factors at play. There's the lawsuit that is still ongoing against the NFL. And then there have been, reports in the past and comments made by folks like Tua Tagovailoa in the past about Brian Flores' kind of, the fierceness with how he coaches. And while I think some of that is definitely just a part of how he operates, you talk to anybody around the building, he's definitely gotten more to the point at which he feels like joy is really important in his coaching. So it's going to be interesting to see if he gets interviews, what those look like. I mean, there's no question he deserves them at this point. And as far as Kevin O'Connell and the extension, I mean, the first thing I'd say is it's coming. If it doesn't, then the TCO Performance Center will be stormed by frustrated fans. Mark Wilf, the Vikings co-owner before the season, said that they would not broach it until after the year. I can tell you, I think with the job that he's done and the way the season has gone, they have ownership has grown very much more willing to broach that subject. It has definitely lingered in recent weeks, is what I would tell you. So whenever that happens, I don't know if it will be during the year. I don't know if it will be after, but it will be a deal that pays Kevin O'Connell a lot of money for the job he's done. And he is the figure of this organization. He does so many interviews. He leads this thing in such a positive way, and I think has people around here feeling rightfully like they are in very good hands because of the way he approaches really everything. So whenever that comes, whether it's sooner or later, it's coming down the pipe, that's for sure.
Well, safe travels to Seattle, Alec. Keep up the great work. And by the way, so the game is at 1:05 Pacific time, 3:05 Central. So I know from Twitter in Tennessee how late Dave Mizutani gets to games. I noticed that he was not there as early as, say, Chip Scoggins. Let's put it that way. So I expect that on Sunday morning that you two head over to the Starbucks Reserve. You tell Dane this, and I expect him to get me a very nice Christmas gift from the Starbucks Reserve because he does not have to be at that stadium bright and early.
No, I will make sure that we hop over there. We may or may not have had a fairly fun night in Nashville the night before that game, knowing that we were going to see Will Levis. That may or may not have happened. But, yeah, my priority this weekend will be, number one, making sure Dane purchases you something at the Starbucks Reserve, and then number two, covering the Vikings for the Athletic. But, I'm glad we could clarify that. I've got that on my plans, and I'm looking forward to Seattle. It should be fun. I've never been. Very excited.
Oh, it's awesome. Now you have to go to the Starbucks Reserve. So, I'm glad you have your priorities in order, Alec. Keep up the great work. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin, too. Appreciate it.
See you, buddy.
That is Alec Lewis. You can follow him on Twitter, Alec_Lewis, our awesome Athletic Vikings writer. When we're back, Nick Bjugstad will be back on The Fan.
Time now for the Vikings Report on The Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barreiro next after this from Miller Lite.
Head over to NFLshop.com for the largest collection of officially licensed gear from all your favorite brands. NFL Shop is your ultimate gifting destination for jerseys, t-shirts, headwear, and more. Take your game day style to the next level with the best selection of NFL gear anywhere. Show off your team pride this holiday season with styles fit for the whole family. To shop now, go to NFLshop.com.
Michael Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan, and happy to be joined by former Mr. Hockey, University of Minnesota star, former Wild star, and now Utah, second stint with Utah Hockey Club, Utah Utes, Yetis, whatever, Nick Bjugstad. Nick, last time we spoke, you guys were trying to get your game together, and here you are, and you got point streak in 6 straight games, 7-1-2 in your last 10.
Yeah, I think last time we talked, I mentioned just that we felt like we were trending in the right direction, just weren't getting the reward for it. So we've been sticking with it. Our identity is starting to come about, and I think that's important for us. Just kind of figuring that out, and I think Minnesota Wild, obviously one of the best teams in the league. So it's fun to come in here and play. And last time we played them, it was a close game, and I think we're trending in the right direction, and we want to keep growing as a team.
Last week I was just blown away by the atmosphere inside Delta Center. Then yesterday, 2 days ago, Ryan Smith opens up 2,000 tickets to give away for free right at the gun. Just disappeared off the map in seconds, and you had a packed house, win a big game in overtime. It's just for what you guys as an organization have dealt with the last couple of years, to have an owner this committed, it's just got to be incredibly inspiring for all of you guys.
Yeah, really cool for us, especially the guys that were in Arizona that haven't experienced, the full fan experience. And nothing against Arizona. I obviously didn't get to experience the Gila Arena except playing opposing, but coming into Utah, just the response from the fans, and obviously that starts from the top. Ryan and the Smith Entertainment Group have done a great job of making it happen. So it's loud. It was really loud the other night. We won in overtime, and I think obviously coming to a city that's not had an NHL team, that's important to get them involved. So those 2,000 tickets, you get them to a game, that makes them interested in it. Then they'll watch it on TV. It's not like Minnesota where you just grow up, watching hockey all the time. So I think for those fans, just to get that experience, that's a big thing for them and for us to have that atmosphere at home.
We're talking with Nick Bjugstad. Last time we talked, also you joked that you almost lived in Park City for the skiing, but didn't want to potentially have a whiteout where you couldn't get down the mountain for a game and things like that. I heard that your wife just had a skiing accident.
Wow, who'd you get that from? That's good, Russ. She's got some bad results this morning, torn ACL. So,
oh my goodness.
The girls were having a good time skiing. I think she caught a patch of ice and went down the wrong run. Didn't know what she was getting into, but that's the way it goes, I guess. She was loving skiing. My daughters are loving skiing, so I will stay off the slopes, especially with my history. So we're dealing with that. But she's tough. She's a tough cookie, and we'll get through it together. But Utah, great state, loving it so far.
How big was last year here? You get the hat trick in this building. That had to be just a dream.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it didn't even feel real. It was one of those where I wasn't scoring, and then all of a sudden one went in, and they started to trickle in. So I don't really know how to explain it, other than hockey gods were on my side that night, and obviously we played well. I think it was a 6-0 game. So it's crazy when you get to come to your hometown and play in front of your family and friends. It's still pretty surreal, and even after having played here, it's still pretty cool coming here.
And what did you do last night? You don't get a lot of time off in this city.
Yeah, I went home, had dinner with my mom and my sister, and saw some family members and said hi to the neighbors, and we just love coming home here. So it'll be a fun night. We're in and out, but like I said, it's still, even 12 years later, it's super fun to come back, and it's something I couldn't have dreamed of as a kid.
And just lastly, Nick, you're only a couple points out of a playoff spot. You guys are playing great, and you look at this franchise right now with all the young kids that you have, the young kids coming. It
just feels like, I know everybody wants to just, accelerate a rebuild, but it just feels like this team's future is really bright.
Yeah, I think it's been in the works for sure. And obviously, they've made some of the right picks, and the Coolies and the Gunthers, and, picking up McBain in free agency. There's a lot of guys that are coming into their own and really proving that they are good players in this league. So it takes a little time, but for us, we're not looking at it like it's a new franchise or we're going to ease into this. I think we definitely have the right culture and the right systems in place to have success. So we got to keep growing as a team, and it's been fun to be a part of it.
Yep, and it's great having leaders like you in this room. Nick, really appreciate it as always. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
That is the epitome of Minnesota nice, Nick Bjugstad. And not only did Nick do that interview, he actually missed the team bus, back to the hotel to do that interview with me. So always appreciate Nick's time. When we come back, speaking of another incredibly nice human being, the longtime left wing of the third line of the Minnesota Wild, Marcus Foligno, will be back on The Fan.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee. So you say,
"Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?"
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
Hey, Meta, call Eva.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, "Hey, Meta," to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smartglasses.